New York sports is failing. And what I mean by that is the last major champion was my New York Giants in 2011 season, but technically 2012. My New York Yankees did make the World Series this year. It didn't really mean anything. They got humiliated. They lost in really, really bad fashion. The Dodgers smoked us. And honestly, I don't think this Yankees team is going to win this year. I love my teams, but I'm also a realist. Although, it's not really saying much, because New York's been on the decline for quite a long time now.
The Jets have been a laughingstock of the NFL for the last 25 years, and the Giants the last 15. The Bills have been cursed since the start of time, and I don't even need to touch on why the Mets haven't won a single thing since '86. Let's figure it out together why New York sports are crumbling.
As I've already mentioned, the last major champion in New York was my Giants in 2011, but they also won in 2007, which is great for me. Great, two championships in 5 years, and I was actually alive for both of them. But for the state of New York, since the year 2000, there has been 6 total champions. 6. I can count them on one, well, technically 2 hands, but you get the point. I can count it on 2 hands. 2 by the Yankees in the year 2000 and 2009. Yeah, Giants in 07 and 11. New York FC, it's a soccer club, won in 21, and New York Liberty won in 24. But since New York Liberty and New York FC are both not part of the major 4 sports, at least in most Americans' eyes, we're only counting NBA, NHL, MLB, and NFL.
After bringing the list down to just those 4 major sports, New York has 9 teams in those 4 sports. This list contains the Giants, Jets, Yankees, Mets, Knicks, Nets, Rangers, Islanders, and for now, the Bills. Now, before we go forward, I understand that the Bills are not located in the New York City metropolitan area, but being realistic, most of the reasons I list affect them as well. Oh, and this also makes it worse for New York, which helps for content reasons. Multiply 9 teams by 25 seasons, the 2000 season does count as 1, and you get 225 seasons total. So in 225 seasons, only four, that is it, have ended in championships, which is not good. For reference, let's compare it to New York's biggest rival, Boston. They have only 4 major 4 sports teams, the Patriots, Bruins, Red Sox, and Celtics. And they have combined for over 100 seasons, the 4 of them. But guess what? They have a grand total of 13 championships. And I'm no mathematician by any means, but something tells me that 13 is 3 times bigger than 4. Nonetheless, that's only one example, and there's plenty more I could give. But let's get to what's causing the failure.
One of the first reasons that we're going to talk about today why New York is failing honestly comes down to the money aspect. Historically speaking, New York has been the number one market, number one sports market, number one market, just everything across the board. It was always New York. And while that hasn't actually shifted in the actual market of the world, it has in the sports market. And you're also starting to see that money is the main thing behind why people are signing contracts or not signing contracts. New York has been stingy for years, and I'm talking every sport. Now, I do have to clarify, I don't know much about hockey, so correct me if I'm wrong about any of these contracts or anything like that. I'm sorry if I'm not talking much about it. But in terms of the NFL, MLB, and NBA, New York hasn't really signed many major players. It's always been trades or drafts.
Just to give a few examples, recently the Yankees lost Juan Soto. Now granted, he did sign to a fellow New York team, the Mets, and it was a $700 million contract. The Yankees also almost nearly lost Aaron Judge as a result of their stinginess. The New York Giants paid Daniel Jones over $40 million a year just to cut him through his second year of his contract, but let Saquon Barkley, a now Super Bowl champion, just walk. Jets have been pathetic for as long as I've been alive, and their best year since 2000 is a meme being the butt fumble. The Knicks and Nets have neither ever really wanted to pay anyone to stay, at least since 2000, and I think this point is pretty much hammered home by now. Getting into the other half of the money situation in New York, it's taxes. Not to get political, but taxes in New York are the worst in the country, with an average state tax being close to 12%. That's not including federal, your local, whatever, everything else, just state tax. The high end of being as high as over 52% of somebody's paycheck, depending on the area and income. Now that's a gross total that is everything combined. This may not shock some, but to others who know, it doesn't matter, rich or not, nobody would want to pay that high of a tax. And to touch on that, excluding the NBA, there's some players in the NHL, NFL, and MLB that aren't making millions and can go as low as $700,000. which granted is still a lot of money, yes, but unless you play for the Buffalo Bills, after taxes, it will still not be enough to buy a home or condo in the New York City metro area. This is a post-editing cut here, and I noticed I didn't even talk about this. I just talked about how you could buy a home or not buy a home for under $700,000, and after taxes, it's probably closer to like 400,000. Yeah, it's still a lot of money, and I'm going to reiterate that a lot. But you're a sports player, you could get traded at any second. That $400,000 has to last you a long time. And if you buy a home in New York for, you spend all of your money on a home in New York, you have nothing left, and they decide to just up and trade you, you are SOL. You have nothing. Again, to clarify, it's a lot of money, yes, but they have a lot more opportunities to make more money outside of New York and play for a more competitive team regardless of the sport.
Second reason is kind of another big/main reason. It's honestly just the weather. New York weather kind of sucks compared to Miami or Dallas or LA or literally any other major city below us or to the West Coast. Now granted, there are other cities that suffer from the same problem as New York does, that being Minnesota, Chicago, Boston, Detroit, Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, all of them. They all suffer from the same problem as New York. So why exactly does it feel like just New York is singled out in this problem? It's not necessarily that the weather in New York is worse, but it's just that it's just as bad as the others, less money. We already talked about it.
Not to get sidetracked, but what do all of those cities that I named have in common? No big free agents ever signed to those teams, at least 9 out of 10. And even when they do get a big free agent, or maybe even 2, most average players would still not prefer to sign to any of those teams in any cities. Most players want to be in a warm city, but so does the average person. So it makes sense. Particularly for football, New York sucks. Both MetLife and Highmark play outside in the cold, in the autumn and winter. Now, I am a firm believer in football is not football without snow, but again, would you rather be in Miami in 72-degree weather or play in the Ice Bowl, which had -10, -20-degree temperatures? The NFL knows this themselves, which is why most teams play in domes now, and why historically a majority of the Super Bowls are hosted in a warm climate or in a domed stadium. There are a few exceptions to this rule, such as the Patriots and Seahawks Super Bowl in 2014, which was hosted at MetLife Stadium. However, to clarify, MetLife was a brand new stadium, or close to new stadium at that time, and it also had one of the biggest seating capacities in the NFL. The last point of this is that owners value fan experience as well. Now, I know that some people may not believe that, but it's true. The happier the fans are, the more money that the team will make. I haven't even touched on what it's like to play playoff baseball in October in New York City. The bat doesn't feel good on the hands, and neither does just about any part of the sport. Most athletes will tell you playing in the cold hurts and just plain sucks. Well, I guess we've covered enough of that, so we're going to move on to the third reason now.
Some New York franchises are historical, and by that I'm talking mainly about the Yankees and the Giants. The reason I'm talking about those two in specific is obviously every non-Yankee Yankee fan screams 27 championships. I've only been alive for one. I'm going on 22 this year. 22 years I've been alive, I've seen one championship by my Yankees, yet everybody claims to, 27 rings. Now, what's historical about it is if you look at from the 1920s to even the 1970s, and so on and so forth, even further, the Yankees just dominated everybody and everything, no matter what happened. It was the Yankees on top of the world. And even my New York Giants. Now, granted, they never had as much of a dominant stretch as my Yankees did, but they did win a championship, every decade for the last 4 up until the 2020s. And then if you even look pre-Super Bowl era, they also had 4 championships before the Super Bowl era as well. So yeah, New York is pretty historical. And that is another reason why people aren't coming here anymore. It's just not as historical, but we'll talk about it.
I know I did kind of a piss poor job at actually explaining what I was talking about, but what I meant essentially was that it's just not as historical anymore. A lot of players came to both franchises because it was such a historical piece of the sports world, but as time goes on, so does sports. A great example of this would be the Yankees were the face of the MLB, I'd argue up until recently, and what most would argue still are. Players such as Babe Ruth, Mickey Mantle, Lou Gehrig, Yogi Berra, Roger Maris, Joe DiMaggio are just a few names of the Yankees greats before the 70s. Some together, others alone. But nonetheless, this group of guys lasted from the 20s to the 70s, wreaking havoc upon everybody. I could go on and on about all the legends of the Yankees, but the fact remains, we're past that point. Those players will never be forgotten, but kids in the 2000s and 2010s were not growing up on New York players. The idols of kids, especially in the late 2000s, were not in New York. They were Brady, LeBron, Kobe, Ovechkin, and yes, probably Jeter then. But if you remove Jeter from that equation and you get your answers. As time goes on, less and less legendary players are migrating to New York, meaning the next generation that grows up watching the sport will more than likely follow in their idols' footsteps. Recently, Trout, Ohtani, LeBron, Curry, Kobe, what do they all have in common? If you guessed it correctly, it's probably time to move on to the next and final main reason.
Before I continue on with this video, I do want to say thank you all so much for watching and tuning in. If you are enjoying it, please leave a like below and comment what your favorite part or least favorite part about this is, or what you agree and disagree with. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. It does help me out quite a bit. I'm hoping to be at 1,000 by New Year's next year. Now, granted, that is a long ways away, but that is my personal goal. So once again, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll let you back to the video now.
Those players all played or currently play in California. They are or were the face of either the NBA or MLB. I haven't even mentioned the fact that Luka is now in Los Angeles. As time moves forward, more and more players are moving to LA because that's where everyone wants to be anymore. Historically, New York versus Los Angeles has always been a debate, but it was always dominated by New York. However, recently the scales have kind of flipped. Not only is LA a city built for rich people and celebrities, but the weather is nicer and more player and fan friendly than New York. Unlike their counterparts, LA hasn't been shy to throw money at players. I'm looking at the Rams and Dodgers in this particular instance. But man, let me tell you about that Warriors and that 5-year stretch as well. New York is quickly falling behind other major cities in the sports aspect of the world. Players would much rather play in Boston, anywhere in Florida, anywhere in California, and even Texas than New York. Although Texas is currently going through their own issues, and I'll probably make a video on that in the future. I wish it was as simple as just being the biggest market in North America, but unfortunately, not even that will remain the truth as time goes on.
Moving forward, at least in terms of the sports market, New York is not failing by really any means necessary. It is still a top 3, top 5 sports market to be in. And that is not without saying anything. New York historically has always been at the top, and going forward into the future, it will always be near the top. However, whereas New York is just kind of staying stagnant or even slightly falling on the decline, every other city is just growing in population, or it's going up, or the popularity is going up, or it's just better and better and better. And over time, New York has stayed where other cities are starting to creep over. The two main examples, as I've already touched on before, are Los Angeles and Boston. They have both overtaken New York in the sports market. Well, that's pretty much it, and I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will talk to you all later. Peace out.